Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the East and West Learning Club. I'm Yang Wang, the organizer of this club. We are a nonprofit group, culture group, and you are very welcome to join us so we can learn together both Eastern and Western culture. And we want to commute with people from different cultural backgrounds. Today, we will have this last session of our poetry series by poets laureate. All this summer, we have had a wonderful experience with five actually, wonderful poets laureate. And today they're all here to have a wrap-up discussion, and we'll get to hear more of their poems. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to take this moment to especially thank Anna In. Anna, thank you for organizing this whole series and bringing four brilliant poets to us. So we get to not only know their beautiful poetry, but also their intelligent words, their life stories, perspectives. That's so wonderful. And your discussion about translation tells us some difficulties there from one language to the other, the ideas, and the interesting part. So the worth of the work. Thank you so much. For our audience, we're recording this session. So we ask you to mute yourself and turn off video until at the end, there will be an open floor for everybody to participate. And if you have any questions, please send it to the chat room. And our volunteer here today, Renee, will take care of that. Thank you, Renee. And some of our participants will also get to recite their poems. Without further ado, I give the time to our poets. Anna?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. Our last final session for Poetry in Translation, East Meet West. Today, thank you, Yang Wang, for your wonderful introduction and co-hosting this event. And thanks the League of Canadian Poets for funding this event. And today, we have all our featured poets, guest poets back. And Molly Peacock, a well-known USA Canadian poets. Molly.
Hello.
Good.
Hello.
Moritz, the current poet laureate of Toronto and a professor of English at the University of Toronto. Al, please wave your hands. Okay, good.
Hello.
And also Alice Major, the first poet laureate of Edmonton. Yeah, and then George Elliott Clarke. And
hi everybody.
Hello.
Our former poet laureate of Canada. And also today we will have a very special guest, and also a poet and a publisher, Michael Mirolla. Okay, Michael. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Michael Mirolla is an award-winning novelist, short story writer, playwright, and poet. He has authored more than 10 books. Michael's latest awards are the 2020 Reader Views Award for his novel, The Last News Vendor, Quattro Books, 2019, and the 2016 Brasini Literary Prize for his short story collection. The Lessons in Relationship Dialectics, Red Hand Press, 2015. Michael has been the editor-in-chief for Guernica Editions since 2009. Michael was born in Italy and raised in Montreal, now makes his home in Hamilton, Ontario. Hello, Mike. Welcome you. Could you say a few words to our audience because you are new here?
Well, thank you for inviting me. First of all, this looks like a great event. I see all these poets here that they're going to overwhelm us actually with their words. and they're laureates and other laureates. But again, thank you for having me. And I think you wanted to talk a little bit about translation to start off. I think was what you were asking, and how Guernica, for example, chooses its translation projects, why we do it, that sort of thing.
Yes, because I believe a lot of translators want to know, right? What's the challenge to publish books in translation, and how do you decide to choose what to publish? Yeah, Thank you.
All right. Well, I mean, translation in Canada there's two classes or two types of translations. One is the translations by Canadian translators of Canadian authors and into one of the official languages, and one of the Canadian official languages and or Indigenous languages. So that's one type of translation. Then there's the second type where it's a translation of a non-Canadian author by a non-Canadian translator of material from other parts of the world to be translated into either English, French, or Indigenous languages. The first type can be sponsored by the Canada Council, and the Canada Council provides some funding for translations by Canadian authors by Canadian translators of Canadian authors. They provide funding for the translator fees, and the translator fees are the most expensive part of any translation project. 100,000 word novel, for example, will cost between $18,000 and $20,000 in translator fees. And the Canada Council will provide that funding if accepted. If the grant is accepted, they will pay for that. So that makes it a lot easier for us to translate Canadian authors into one of the official languages or one of the Indigenous languages. The foreign translations are a little more complicated in that the Canada Council does not provide funding for any of those. So that would be up to the country of origin to provide funding for. Let's say we want to translate an Italian author, for example, into English, which we have done at Guernica quite often. So what happens in those cases, and most times, is that the country of origin, the arts agencies in the country of origin, provide funding for those publications because they want their authors to be translated into English or French or Spanish or whatever. And so the actual agencies there provide funding. If they don't provide funding, it makes it very difficult to do these translations. One of the problems with translations in Canada is that they are not our best-selling books by a long shot. In fact, your poets should be proud because translations sell even less than poetry books. So that at least we, as poets, we can say, yeah, look, our books sell better than translations in most cases. But and to me, I think translations are very important because they bring in experiences from other parts of the world. In Canada, we have a nation that has a bilingual official languages act. And so, we can do a lot with Quebec authors, for example, French Quebec authors, and translate them into English so that at least the English audiences can get to see a different approach to the world, different way of looking at things. So, that's the other thing about translations is that they are not eligible for the tax credits. And there's a bureaucratic reason for that, and that's because the tax credit people claim that they are not original products, which is a lot of malarkey. But that's so our translations are not eligible for any of the tax credits, which they can go up to $2,000 per book, because the tax credits are based on your expenses on a book. On whatever costs that you put out for a book, you get 30% back. but translation is not eligible. We've been fighting this. The Canadian publishing houses have been fighting this to get these on there, but so far it hasn't happened. Hopefully, maybe sometime in the future, this might happen. This would really get translations in Canada just exploding if that were the case. If we got, so that's the story on translations, at least from my end. You know, we translate poetry, we translate novels, done plays. You know, it's quite a it's a good experience, and it's good culturally for the country, but there are a lot of problems with it as well. So that's my translation spiel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sorry, during your talk, they had some like interruption. Anyway, so other guests, do you have any comments or expertise to share as well?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, anyone.
Anyone. Okay. Sorry.
So I mean, other one also wanted to add some more, or you have other experience about that, or?
I think in chat room, Lily asked a question
yes,
about.
Yes. Yeah, but I will need to, okay. Some question we will not. Okay, we will take one question from the chat room, but now we are not opening, so that's the problem because we needed to control the time. But okay. Anyway, we can take one point for this. Okay, so Lele ask Michael. So what about a foreign author translated by a Canadian translator?
Yeah, no, foreign authors translated by Canadian translators are in the same position as foreign authors translated by foreign translators. There's no bureaucratically, I mean, there's no difference in terms of trying to get grants for that. The only thing that it's lately is that Canadian authors who write in a language other than the official languages can be translated into the official languages and get Canada Council funding for the translator fees. So they're in the same boat as someone translating from English to French, for example, or French to English, or Indigenous language to one of the official languages. We just, in fact, this year we published a translation by Pablo Urbani, who wrote in Spanish, yeah. But he's a Canadian citizen, and so we translated that into English. God's Zoo, it's a tremendous novel. And next year we're publishing a novel by Nino Fama, who writes in Italian, or wrote in Italian. He's a professor at Waterloo, or was. He's retired, I believe. And we had that translated into English. So but a foreign writer or foreign, the moment foreign is mentioned, who's non-Canadian, automatically it falls outside the purview of the Canadian Council, of the Canada Council for that. So I mean, if a foreign publisher wants to translate a Canadian author into that language, then the foreign publisher applies to the Canada Council for grant, for funding. That's a different matter. We don't even get into that portal. There's no way for us to enter that portal in the Canada Council.
Yeah, I want to add one comment. Everyone, you can check some YouTube video I just watched a few days ago, released, and talk about the art of a pitch, right? By Michael Mirolla. So the art of a pitch. So it's wonderful if you wanted to get your book published, or he write the query letter. He gave a note for advice there. So please go to watch the video as well. And also, I know for apply for the funding, apply for the grants, it's very difficult. So for our guests, do you have any tips or any suggestions? I know it's very difficult. Yeah.
I would just say thank you to Michael, like you have said, Anna. There's so many niches of publishing that are important bridges, and yet it is so hard to make them financially sustainable. And we need you.
Yeah, exactly, and very difficult. We are glad because the Canadian have the government, right? Have the the government funding to help. Other country maybe not have this kind of privilege. So we are still very grateful for our publishers and our governments as well. Oh, okay, I know. Molly, you want to say something?
Oh no, I want to echo the thanks, and thank you, Michael, for publishing Anna's anthology, of which we are all represented.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
You know, I wanted to thank George. It's George introduced. I also sent several publishers for this manuscript, right, for Mirror and Windows. And I don't know which publisher will publish translations, right? Before my book is all in English, right? So, and George said send it to Quinnica edition. They tried to buy it. So, okay, I said okay.
Wait on.
Yeah, thank you, George. Yeah, thank you all. Moritz, do you have anything to say?
I just echo what Michael says, and I've been trying to promote translation in Canada myself, and not as a publisher, but for years, and really in cohort with my really good friend and wonderful translator, Beatrice Hausner, who's often been president of the Literary Translators Association of Canada. He's a great translator from English into Spanish and Spanish into English and French into English, and has you know, been a big promoter of this. And I think one of our points is that, I guess 2 points that Michael touched on, basically about translation in general. A translation is an author. And if you don't really think a translator is an author, you're really behind the times. The pretensions of the Canada Council is to be theoretically right with it. And all their grants are premised on that. And in this, they're like existing in, I don't know when, like the 18th century. It's really, really insulting and stupid. Then the second thing is we have such a richness of languages and cultures here because of so much influx, and because of the variety of the peoples who were here before there was any influx. And the fact that we don't take advantage of that to become an international center of cultural exchange in the world that is coming to be more and more based upon this factor is just plain stupid. The cost of the wing of one F-35 would pay for, you know, years of tremendous cultural explosion if put into the many people from many languages that we have interested in culture, literature, and the bringing of their own home literature into enrichment of English, which is where they now live, or French to some degree as well. So this is really, to me, a cultural national shooting oneself in the foot over and over and over again. It's hard to imagine just how stupid it is, you know, so.
Yes, well, it's insular, you know, and I mean, it promotes a kind of insularity and doesn't reach out into the world and doesn't acknowledge that the world is here. People are these writers are among us, and I think we're obligated to embark on these translations.
People read the great authors in translation. If the translator's not an author, I wonder what they think they're reading. You know, did Virgil write the Aeneid? Well, yes, he did in a way, but not the one you're reading. So too with the latest, you know, Nobel Prize winner from Turkey or wherever it is. You know, so the idea that the author, that the translator is not an author, is just idiotic.
if I could make a point too, now you've made me think of at least 2 authors, immigrant authors here in Edmonton, who are well established in their native languages, have come here for various reasons, but have a very hard time connecting with the literary establishment, if you will, in this country, because they can't afford to pay a translator. Translators can't afford to work entirely for free.
Exactly, yeah.
And just strengthening the awareness and the fabric of our country is, it's as you say, a tremendous opportunity that we're just missing.
Okay. So, George, you wanted to add some points, or?
Well, I'll just chime in with everybody else and say how wonderful it is that we have Guernica, which has proven over decades, 40 plus years, to have this strong interest in translation from various languages into English and French. I love the fact that that publishing house started over 40 years ago, 42 years ago to be exact, with an emphasis on French, English, and Italian, and vice versa. And I use the Italian phrase deliberately, or maybe I should say Latin phrase deliberately. And I also want to send a shout out to Exile Editions, who've also published many works, many poets, short story writers, novelists, also in translation. Nancy used to do some of that probably 20 years ago, but that was 20 years ago. And I don't think they are as active on that translation front as they were at one point. So we certainly could use more publishing houses being interested in opening up those windows and doors so that we can hear and read each other across the Tower of Babel curse, and grow from that and learn from that, learn from other narratives, other ways of producing poetry, and so on, that can only enrich our own art. So as Al was saying, we are definitely shooting ourselves in both feet and cutting off all of our noses despite all of our faces by refusing to have that open mind policy, an open book policy around translation. So today, dates like today and this program for the East-West Learning Club is really wonderful, and we could use more.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. So we are now, we will start our reading because we don't have so much time. So we will start our reading. We will have two rounds of readings, and each of us will have 3 minutes. And we will start with Molly Peacock. So we will follow our our pattern like before. Molly Peacock, Al Moritz, Alice Major, George Elliott Clarke, Michael Mirolla, and me. So go, Molly, please. Yeah, yours.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with a question, Anna, and that's a question that Al asked you in our email as we planned this afternoon. Are we to read the poems that you have translated, or are we to read poems that we ourselves have translated from other languages into English?
Oh, it's up to you. I said this is very friendly.
Right. Then I'm actually going to read a poem by Jules Supervielle. Many people pronounce that Supervielle, and that's how it looks in French, but in fact, he pronounced it Supervielle, the Peruvian French poet that is so environmentally prescient. This is a poem that was written just after 1905, and it's called Prophecy. And I had the privilege of, I translated this for fun. I mean, most people think of translation as work, but I don't do a lot of translating, so I think of it as fun. And I did this with a friend who has passed away, William Louis Dreyfus. And so sort of in honor of him and in honor of good old Jules, here is Prophecy, talking about environmental issues. A century ago, predicting a landscape that he envisioned. One day, the earth will be only a blind space turning, confounding night and day. Under the huge Andes sky, it will no longer have mountains, not even the smallest ravine. Of all the world's houses, nothing but a balcony remains. And of all human hemispheres, only a sorrow without a ceiling. Of the late Atlantic Ocean, a slight taste of salt in the air. A magical flying fish who knows nothing of the sea. From a 1905 coupe, meaning a car, a 1905 car, there are 4 wheels, but no road. 3 young girls of the time, stilled in their vaporized state, look out the carriage door, thinking that Paris isn't far, but have nothing but the smell of that sky that grips them by the throat. And from where the woods once stood, a bird's song will rise that no one will identify or place or even hear, except God, who, listening as a birder, will identify. It's a goldfinch. And that is the end of that poem, with only a supreme deity being able to identify that bird and that bird's song. A little terrifying and accurate to a metaphorical degree vision from a poet who lived in Peru but wrote in French, just as we're speaking about different languages here, and how fluid globally and culturally we are, sending us a little message 115 years later. Thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Al, your turn.
I'll read a short poem by Ludwig Zeller, Chilean, translated by yours truly from Spanish, and then I'll read a poem of my own, which ends more or less with the same image that Supervale's poem does. It just appeared in my most recent book, but sort of upside down from it. So here's Ludwig's poem, which is poem number 6 from his book of short poems, numbered poems, called Exercises for the Third Hand, which you remember is an idea of Schumann's, that there's a third hand that mysteriously plays under the written and known music, right? So Zeller took that idea. Anyway, here's poem number 6. I see my father approaching down the road, his arms outstretched. He is dead, I think, so how can he be here? He laughs at my doubts, sucking at the smoke in his amber pipe. Figures rise out of it, and the burning tobacco suspends lights above us like signs which, as they show themselves, polish the mirrors of my inner eye. I laugh too. These are the landscapes I've dreamed, the invisible city I wander through, hearing voices as I walk the desolate streets of an everyday labyrinth surrounded by desert. My father has to leave. He hugs me. He takes a talking parakeet out of his chest. He taps with his staff and the road opens up. Now I hear over my left shoulder a mysterious transparent bird beginning to sing. And this poem is called High Windows. And it's about the occasional happening of one of the unemployed or even unemployable getting scooped up and be given a little cheap job for a while. This guy gets a kind of gardening janitorial job around the big outdoor towers, and he speaks. High windows. This is the job that finally they gave me in spring and autumn, to sweep up the bodies of finches around the bases of the crystal windowed towers. When I used to sleep on the streets, it was similar. One of us died, the body would be picked up, but as long as we lived, never. It was as though there was someone somewhere who said, let them live, let them be, always let them alone. Let us have them with us as they are, forever. So strange it was and seemed at first. One of us disappeared, no trace, or just a filthy crumbled bag of stuff left in a corner. But where was she? Until it ceased to appear. So often it happened, a wonder. Seasonal work, a job for a while, to search the long planters and bases of the wall for birds who break against windows in the times of migration, unable to see the hardness and the shining image of the new, more perfect world's openness. In the future, there are people who will have to imagine what world these words of mine are living in. Imagine it from their day, in which there is no longer the knowledge of what were towers. Thanks, everybody.
Yay. Thank you. So beautiful. So now, Alice, yeah, your turn.
My turn. I was trying to think if I had a poem with a goldfinch in it, but I don't. So I'm going to read.
With the parakeet.
How about a parakeet?
There are corvids. There are corvids, as a matter of fact. I have one, come to think of it. There goes the neighborhood. Magpie as neighbor, you've moved in. Hold your raucous parties, shout at the kids, fix up your house. A slipshod DIY endeavor that always seems half done. Twigs strewn all round the yard. We complain that you've forced out the elegant kingbird couple and that lovely warbler family who used to ornament the neighborhood. Forgetting it wasn't you who moved in first, altered the architecture of poplar, hazelnut, and reed-rimmed slough, wild rose, stonecrop, berry bush. We ignore the fact that you're the only ones prepared to cope with us, to live off garbage bins out back, plant your nests where predatory cars go prowling by, and square up to the cat. And
by the way, Anna, there's one person waiting in the waiting room. The name is Mandy Wan. Does anybody know?
I guess maybe this is okay. Okay, we gave a try.
Admit her.
Okay.
Sorry, I think Alice hasn't finished yet.
Alice, yeah, okay.
I was going to read one poem that I have been instrumental in translating because I have such limited exposure to translation. But I did work on with my friend Yukari Meldrum, as I mentioned in my session with Anna, on a small book of translations from Mizuzu Kaneko, the Japanese poet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will read you one of hers. Hashitate's waves. Hashitate's waves come over, come over. In the lake to the right, the grebes dive under, dive under. On the sea to the left, white sails sail by, and through the pine woods of Komatsubara, the whoosh, whoosh of light wind blows over. The sea gulls play with the ducks of the lake all day. When the blue moon comes out, the lake spirit wanders to look for shells on the shore. Hashitate's waves come over, come over. On the right, small waves chuckle, yes. On the left, sea waves thunder, yes. On the land, the small stones of Koishihara click, clack under wooden sandals. You can't come over.
Thank
Can
you.
I ask you a technical question? When do you call the moon a blue moon?
There is an answer to that. Are we answering questions right now, though, Anna?
No. Lugang, please don't, because we are really need to rush our time, so we don't open for any question right now. So sorry, yeah. And I guess if you Google blue moon, you can find the answer, of course. Yeah. Anyway, our turn is George. Okay, George, please.
Thanks. Wonderful to be taking part in everything today. I'm going to read two poems. The first one is titled Robert Paquin. Robert Paquin is a Quebecois translator who I worked with a lot when I was Parliamentary Poet Laureate, because everything I did in that position had to be translated into French. So he was my go-to translator, and we continued to work together on different things. So I've written this poem about translation for him. So it's to Robert Paquin, and it rhymes, but there's a lot of enjambment, so you may not hear the rhymes, although I'll try to emphasize them as I read. So here we go. Your poem on translation needs no Englishing. It's just the usual elaboration of that labor where one loses one's wits to say what one would like to say, to trace someone else's thoughts so that the psyche is blasted as one's ink pulses. And what's left is a dream, a myth of meaning, the sense that translation's a scheme of tension in each sentence, as if it were possible to say, I love you in any language that's sensible in any way, impervious to endless anguish. And the other poem, very quickly, this is one that you have translated, Anna. But I'm just going to read the English because I can't read the Chinese version. Anyway, it's called Self-Composed. It also rhymes, a lot of enjambment, but anyway, here it is. It's today that I can see daisies play at being me. Beaming gold, they bend and sway, limber, bold, anarchic, gay, holding out their leaves like hands. They don't shout or make demands. They're quiet, quite, but not shy. Their riot is their beauty. If I seem a weed to some eyes, I dream, and flower I am.
Thank you. Okay, now it's our turn for our special guest and the publisher, Michael. Michael, it's your turn.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I wasn't planning on reading a poem in translation, but I will.
No,
and,
any poem, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm going to read a poem by Giuseppe Ungaretti, who was an Italian poet, and he was a soldier during the First World War, and he wrote a poem called Vigil. And a whole night long, crouched close to one of our men, butchered with his clenched mouth, grinning at the full moon, with the congestion of his hands thrust right into my silence. I've written letters filled with love. I have never been so coupled to life. That's a short poem by Ungaretti. And I'll read one of my own poems called Arguments for Safe Passage. Slender reeds whistling like autumn, stiff, arthritic in their old age, brittle backs snapping in the wind, feet puddled in murky water, fluff exploding in hopes of reproduction. Is that any way to start a poem in the quest for contemporary vibes? Since when have puffballs contributed to the betterment of humankind? Or a willow shedding tears brought gain to the electric marketplace? Without the bassinet afloat on its surface, you ask, why is the river even there? Can a snake-necked swan crush stone into powder for brick and mortar? Can a mountainside in bloom bring the slave sex trade to a halt? Can the seaweed's dancing fronds save an abandoned child from drowning? On the other hand, has a pond ripple under moonlight ever molested anyone? Stood by as a military dictator bombed recalcitrant stadia, unleashed weapons to spread disease, hacked software for corrupting nuclear centrifuges? An aching tree leans into the wind, craggy body cradling tender limbs, lost hearts scratched into a bleeding bark. Next, you're gonna tell me how wandering, lonely as a don't say it will wash away the sludge of sexual assault, grubbiness turned inside out to reveal unctuous poison clinging to systemic matrix. The space so manufactured it feels as if some other species has stolen into us during the night, has hollowed us out like a phalanx of body-snatching wasps, simulacra marching towards an event horizon to debrief our humanity. A broken reed rushes down a mountain stream, righting itself in the swirling waters. I am creation, so watch me bleed. I am this poem, so watch me glow. I am the present, so watch me vanish. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah, we are the poem, right? We are the creation as well. Anyway, so I want to thank Michael for agreed to publish Mirrors and Windows, and it's a collection of translations, and it includes more than 25 English language poems and more than 15 Chinese language poems. And of course, our guest poets here work also are included in this book. And today, I want to read a poem. I translate the poem, a great Chinese modern poet. His name, I think every Chinese poet know. It's Luo Fu, and Luo Fu's poem, and also Luo Fu, Zhang Me, and Ya Xuan. They founded the Epoch Poetry Quarterly more than 60 years ago, and today it's still alive. And it's from Taiwan. This magazine is very good. And so last year I asked the permission. I asked the permission of his wife and to translate 3 of poems by him. He died a few years ago, so I wanted to use this poem. And I translated his poem. Then I was so touched. I wrote a poem as a respect to him. So now I want to first read the English version, and the title is The Great Phrase. The Great Phrase to Luo Fu. How to take the loneliness, how to pass the long night. To your back, the distance was blurry, silent again. I wish I'd be at your side, listening to you or reading your letter. I wish time would not pass by, like love held by hands, like the frozen robin, being alive. Yet snow falls far and near on me, on me. So now I will read the Chinese version. So, and the Chinese version title is 大寒。大寒，至洛夫，如何承受那无边的孤独？如何度过那漫长的深夜？在您身后，远处一片苍茫，一再沉寂。但愿我能在您身边倾听您，或者读您的信。但愿时间不会流逝，就像爱握住了，就像冻僵的知更鸟又复活了，而雪不断落下，在远处，在身上。Thank you very much.
Wow.
Okay, thank you.
Very
Now
nice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Luo Fu is a very, it's a well-known Chinese modern poet. He add the Chinese classical value, poetry value to modern Chinese poets. It's wonderful. And he studied English major, but he wrote in Chinese. he even got a Nobel Award nominated for Nobel Award, and he when he died at around 19 years old, he still keep writing. He still have wonderful poetry. So yeah, I want to use this as a tribute to him. Okay, so now Molly Peacock, it's your turn again. This is our second round, so we will try to quickly finish. Then we will open for the open mic. Okay, good.
Okay, because there is an open mic, I'm going to read two tiny poems, one a translation from the Anglo-Saxon, a riddle that I did, and then one that Anna translated, one of my poems that Anna translated. But before that, I want to give a shout out to Parvis Chowdhury, who is here in our audience, a wonderful, wonderful translator. Parvis has translated many Canadian poets into Bengali, and it's really we're very honored to have you among us. So just a shout out there.
Thank you, Molly, for mentioning that. Thank you.
So here's the poem of mine that Anna translated. One of the short ones, Couple Sharing a Peach. It's not the first time we've bitten into a peach, but now at the same time it splits, half for each. Our then is inside its now, its halved pit, unfleshed. What was refreshed. Two happinesses unfold from one joy, folioed. In a hotel room, our moment lies with its ode inside, a red tinge with a hinge. And a tiny, just a tiny riddle. Whoops! Unless I've dropped it here. Here we go. From a book of translations called The Word Exchange. These are poets invited to reach back into the roots of English to translate from the Anglo-Saxon. There are tons of riddles, and this is a tiny riddle. I'm going to give you the answer because who is going to guess this? The answer is a ship's figurehead. Okay, a ship's figurehead. All right. I was a girl, a gray queen, and a man, solo, all in a single hour. I flew with the birds, swam in the seas, dove under waves, died with the fishes, and stepped out on earth, alive, all in a single soul. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, Al, your turn.
Hey, I'll read a couple of translations. This one is from a book that my wife and I translated, Testament for Man by Gilberto Mesa, a Mexican poet whom we actually know and have known since 1974. And this is some of his early work. So this is a lament for some intimate shoes. I wrote a poem called The Translator, which has a shoe metaphor on it for what the translator does. And I completely did not remember that decades before I had translated this poem by Gilberto. And it really is very similar in its use of this metaphor. So, lament for some intimate shoes. So I absorbed this into my subconsciousness so I could steal it without guilt, apparently. Okay. Lament for some intimate shoes. The shoes I used to wear were so old that I had to throw them out, the poor old things. I loved them for the way, loved them from way back because always, long-sufferingly, they were silent about their pains, and there were so many. They molded themselves to the foot with such talent that I had to believe in vocations, in being born for a certain destiny. I loved them from way back, as I said, and further, I had to submit myself to the truths of souls so spent, of decayed heels, of sad and worn out leather that not even a shine could hide for very long, and their intense sadness made me think of things I would never have thought of otherwise. Ah, the life of a shoe is so lonely. It lives for remembering, for knotting together its laces in the posterity of some words, of a written page, if that is the case, or of some childish game without a future. And I'll read the opening passage of a great, great poem, kind of like the wasteland of 20th century French literature, but positive and greater, Fata Morgana by André Breton. So this is a translation I published in the Massachusetts Review a few years back. Hey, this is just an opening, 2/3 of a page of this great poem. This morning, the mountain's daughter holds in her lap an accordion of white bats. A new day, it makes me think of an object I cherish. Mounted transparently in a frame, glass tubes in all the colors of filters of liquors, which before seducing me had to serve, doesn't matter, some necessity of commercial representation. To me, no work of art is worth this little sun-dappled square of grass out of sight of life. A day, a new love, and I pity those for whom love decays by not changing its face. As if the carp who upon awakening hands me from the lightless pool of ringlet of your hair were no more than 100 years old and did not withhold everything that I must not know in order to remain myself. A new day, is it near you I have slept? I have slept, so I've put on the gloves of moss. In an angle, I begin to see the malevolent chest of drawers called yesterday shining. There are cumbersome pieces of furniture whose true function is to hide the ways out. To the other side, the magnetized boat. Who knows, we could leave together for the meeting with the tree under whose bark they say that we are alone with ourselves, one with another in the great algebra. There are some pieces of furniture heavier than if they were filled with sand on the ocean floor. Word levers would be needed against them. These words escaped from old songs which go to the magnificent country of claims, very late into ports crossed by zigzags of fever bouquets. Listen.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wait. Okay, Alice, your turn. Thank.
All right, I'm going to read one poem that has to do with trying to translate a concept from mathematics into poetry. And it's the idea that demographers encode in the phrase the rectangularization of the morbidity curve, which means in an ideal world, we would be able to live hale, healthy lives right to the end and then die. But there's not going to be a long drop off. Of course, that does not happen. Rectangularization of the morbidity curve. The demographers desired geometry. A hale old age and then a rapid fall, a sudden tumble down a slope of scree to that inevitable oblong box. And we agree. Oh, that's the way I want to go. The unexpected failure of an artery from which we never waken. We dread the lingering morbidities ahead, slow occlusions of cognition, bodies angled into immobility, diapered, and life a sad, sagged line, tethered to an all too distant other end. But then I think of you. You said it too. Oh, just put me on an ice floe, send me off. I won't want to live. And yet you did. At no point on that curve of long diminishment were you prepared to leave, to face the cliff. You wanted life until its end. And then I think of curves, the gull's wing drawn from lifting shoulder to the tapered tip, trailing its final feather into air. A line lovelier, perhaps, than that sharp edge of rock plunging to ocean. How to end this? There will be the narrow plot, the dug rectangle. Until then, there will be seagulls wheeling over headland.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Now, Michael, it's your turn.
My turn, not George's turn?
Oh yeah. Sorry, George. My God.
It's okay. I've been
I'm going
pretty
to skip
quiet.
over you, George.
George, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm prepared to read. All of us, when we start out as poets, are probably drawn to particular figures. And for me, 45 years ago, when I was 15, the folks who brought me to poetry or to try poetry were Bob Dylan, Ezra Pound, and specifically Pound's translations from Japanese of Chinese poets, and specifically Li Po, and specifically his poem that Pound titled The River Merchant's Wife, A Letter.
Oh, yeah.
But because I love that poem so much, I started to read other Chinese and Japanese poetry in translation. And so I picked up this little slim volume 40 years ago or so, Mao Zedong poems, and read it very closely. And one of the poems, supposedly by Mao, is one of my favorites is The People's Liberation Army Captures Nanking, or Nanjing, written in April 1949. The translators are anonymous in this little volume, so I can't give you their names, but here's the English version of The People's Liberation Army Captures Nanking. Over Changshan swept a storm headlong. Our mighty army, 1,000,000 strong, has crossed the great river. The city, a tiger crouching, a dragon curling, outshines its ancient glories. In heroic triumph, heaven and earth have been overturned. With power and to spare, we must pursue the tottering foe, and not ape Zhang Yu, the conqueror seeking idle fame. Were nature sentient, she too would pass from youth to age. But man's world is mutable. Seas become mulberry fields. So
that's a great translation. Very nice.
I wish I could tell you translated it, but here is the poem that Mel's poem inspired for me, and so in this poem, which is supposedly written in April 1949, which is supposedly in Mao's voice, but it's my poem, and it's titled "Mao Inks: The People's Liberation Army Captures Nanking." So I'm imagining this is Mao's mindset at the very moment that he's writing his poem that I like so much. So here it is. Seizing the mountain, this crazy jagged zigzag of crags, snow cliffs, cleft skittish rocks, lunging toward the moon's white gravity. I imagine dragon's wings brush my head. I push vertically, hear the sky break, level the antiquated order of things. Below, the state totters. My million troops, their hands blood baptized, their heads flame haloed, scribe fresh history with bullets, grenades. The city unscrolls, awaits our crimson calligraphy, brushstroke and sword stroke. Look, snow hammers earth with leaden softness. Ah, this world's mutable. Mountains become coral reefs. And I'll just add the note that this poem, my response to Mao's poem, was translated into Chinese by Qi Liang and published by Michael Mirolla.
Yeah. In the book. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I have
That's
the book.
very nice. Very nice.
Okay, now it's Michael's turn. So thank you. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to just read two poems from a collection that's will be coming out in the spring of 2021 with Marty Gervais at Black Moss. So the first poem is Demeter makes plans to uproot herself. Already umbilical cord intact, but with eyes downcast, the lamb she's fondling against her chest seems to understand what the rest of us keep at arm's length, often till our final breath. A mother's love, be it as genuine and sweet as myth, can only wrap itself around you for so long. The mossy path through the wood leaves footprints that slowly fill with seepage and mirrors of a turbid sky, memories of Escher woodcuts, Celtic magic buried as traps for Roman centurions, the furious buzz of flies rising as in some no-exit place. And then one god after the other tumbles out and prepares to take a stand, from minor to major, pissant to thunder, but always harping on the same note. Worship me, or else watch me turn into a serial killer. Watch me drag your children under. Satyrs and nymphs spring forth amid gnarled tree roots, spitting out earth and earthworms. They clear the way for a troop of trick-playing sheep and goats. Lamb trailing a swollen-bellied mother, they waddle in elegant disarray, rushing towards the voice that they've come to trust, that calls to them now from a clearing in the trees, formed by a blast of well-placed lightning. One hand clutching grain, the other behind her back, where a glint of sunlight flicks off sharpened metal. Mare-headed Aganepi scatters her blessings, staccato style, as she stands on the steps of the self-consecrated temple she had her consort build in that clearing to separate herself from sacred law, eternal harvests, merciful destruction, and the endless hunger of needy partners. This is where, she tells you, lamb on her lap, she will spend the newborn winter away from the rancid odor of spilled mead, palace intrigue, and thoughts of daughters dragged down to some twilight universe by horny demigods tired of gazing at their own reflections. And where, using her brother's always handy flamethrower to keep warm as snow erases all color and wolfish shadows gather, she will celebrate the joy of a newfound religion. Glass of red wine on the table and mutton stew gurgling on the pot-bellied stove. And the second poem is a short one, The Gaunt Machine. I have no mouth and I must scream. That's Harlan Ellison's short story. The gaunt machine that tortures poetry resides in a cave at the far reaches of the imagined. There, having displaced the remnants of those 1,000-year Reichs, it fattens itself on whatever is left, daily dismembering the word made flesh down to the bone, and then remembering the code to make it come alive again, to make it dangle from genetic hooks for quick re-entry to the slaughterhouse. The gaunt machine wants to feel what the word feels as it is stripped down, turned inside out, skin flayed for hieroglyphics, the painful magic of letters making sudden sense, only when, with echoed howl, it gives up the ghost and then is reanimated daily, the first breath an outrush, a gasp, a momentary respite from the knowledge of what's to come. For it knows, the word knows, there is no way to transfer that magic. But the gaunt machine, with its own ideas on how to bring back flesh time and again, and infinite permutations at hand, has no interest in being informed. It will never achieve this blessed state. There is always a new combination to test. In the meantime, to avoid the distraction of constant howls and moans, pain's unfortunate sidekicks, it removes the orifice through which such noises flow. Thank you.
Okay, okay, thank you. So I will read a short poem, then we will have the open mic. Okay, my poem entitled Ask. And this poem I wrote this year and won the first place for Brooklyn Poetry Society annual poetry contest. And here it is. Ask. After Qiyuan, in no time, summer solstice has arrived. In a trance, the Dragon Boat Festival follows. My heart is wrapped by leaves of wreaths, unfolding, then closing. Bitter sweet and salt sweat, mixed flavors spread and spin. Neither the roaring yellow river nor the green Minora river appears. In my dream, the craving and craved shadow accompanies me all the way till dawn. On my window, raindrops keep tapping, whispers from winds heard far and near. I ask, how many verses could survive and sing internally? How high waves could rise after another drowning? I see wuchang fish fly in the reflection of April willows, tails white as snow, flashing like knives. So this poem is about the Qiyuan, also about the difficulty on the during the COVID-19. And the Qiyuan, we celebrate Qiyuan's life with Chinese and Canadian poets for several years ago. Qiyuan drowned himself because his emperor, his country collapsed. So, and that's all. And now it's our time for open mic. So everyone, thank you all the guests, our special guests and our guests for your wonderful reading. So now let's hear our friends for the open mic. So, and I want to invite you to start your video and unmute yourself. And I have already posted the readers for the open mic in chat room. So please check the chat room for the order. And this is the order for which they will appear. So each have 3 minutes. And so please follow and get ready. And thank you. So the first one will go to Sophia Lu.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. I will write my poem. I wrote it actually in Chinese, but someone helped me to translate to English. Even though I speak English, but not write much poem in English. I'm still studying. Okay, so the title is "The Leaning Tower of Pisa." Sophie, I come not to put it upright, for to oppose the world. Neither do I have the mind, nor the mind. A bell tower that never rings a day, more admires it a chest than all other towers that do play. Like the godfather of Sicily, who never pledged, but by that name was known, inspiring awe in tremor fast stretched. Unnoticeably inclines the way up, till step by step I reach a top. All around me, a tilted world I see. Aloft and silent, the alarm bell hangs. Leaning without falling. It has lived to become a wonder reel, idolized in the world, seized with wonder drill. Walking out of the tower, everything goes on as ever. The upright cannot be made aslant, nor the slanted upright. The upright always win in quantity, while the slanted in oddity. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. So now it's Patrick corner. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Anna. It's an honor to be here, and great to see some faces I haven't seen in a while. It's appropriate for me to be reading this poem because Anna has translated into Chinese for the upcoming Guernica book, and thank you very much for that. But it's also a bit poignant given the events of the last 24 hours down south. It's called Exit Poll, Advice to the New Leader. 1. Promises are made to be broken like rotten eggs, but not until the morning after the election. 2. The current state of affairs is merely a reaction to mistakes others made in the past. 3. Give the people what they want. Visions of fresh young faces, sunny summer picnics, and reduced deficit spending, but don't let them realize a better tomorrow. 4. Because the next administration will have to take it back. 5. Fiscal restraint is what makes our civilization great, or at least it will keep the current system chugging along a bit longer. 6. A balanced budget should almost make up for all those pesky poor people.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, George.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Now it's our turn. Rick, Yu Gang turn.
Yeah, I'll share. So can you guys see it? So this is. Can you see the share the screen?
Yes. Yeah, we see.
Okay, great. So
okay.
This is a poem which is going to appear in a special book of poems by poets around the world dedicated to the theme of endangered animals and birds. So it's a long poem, but I'm only going to read 2 paragraphs. So let's just go to the English version. Siberian cranes. So I go to the middle. All right, right here. White cranes. This is for summoning hundreds and thousands of white cranes, white national borders, white thoughts, and white abstract dresses and shirts. Pieces of moonlight fall on the feathers and are then shaken off. The cranes become whiter and more tranquil, migrate to arrive at the south and to arrive at the warm lakes. White itself is arrival. Every time the wings are unfolded and the white is unfolded, an extraordinary arrival is made. White is the purpose in itself. They also hide black as noble as white. They spread their wings, and the black feathers suddenly bloom on the wing ends. When black gains luster, it breaks away from death and rises to the sublimeness of life. So I just read that much, but I also would like to make an announcement. Here we have a very beautiful poem by George. And that poem, that great poem, along with my translation and a couple of other translations, will appear in this WeChat online journal, Global Poets and Artists Monthly, shortly. George, thank you so much for your great contribution.
Thank you, Rick. Wow.
Okay.
Thank you for your poem.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So
Okay.
that's my part. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And now, Renee Scaroli. Okay, sorry. Renee, it's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
Could you, Rugang, could you stop sharing your screen?
Yes, I'm trying to do that. Hold on. I need to find that place. Yeah,
Okay,
I stopped.
wonderful. Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Anna, for hosting this event and for having all these wonderful poets and for having this opportunity for us open micers to be here. I really appreciate it. So my poem is based on some music by Jane Antonia Cornish, and it's a piece called Wave Cycles, and I titled the poem after that. And you can hear me, yes?
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, Wave Cycles. I am weighted by your sadness, weighed by the weight, in sorry hospital rooms, in bars and rhythmic beeps. They punctuate the silence as we stare out green curtain windows and wonder, why so much snow in April? Snow clinging still to trees, to stillness in its becoming, blooming into weight, a pulse of weight as red against a darkened screen, an LED of green, translucent as your skin. And all this waiting, repeated steps in hallways, footfalls, silence on linoleum, silent stretcher sails past, and we see ourselves as patients, potential waiting to occupy that seat, that barely covered bottom. And I am watching, feel your weight on my bones, in the blood you once transferred to me, cords never caught on birthdays, only death, only days left. Weight stares out curtain windows, stares at frost from your breath that threatens to fall like showers, April snow, falling weightless into waves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee. So now is Haya's turn. So.
I used to be a student of Professor Moritz, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to be reading a poem called Pocket-Sized Love.
Where are you in reality right now?
I'm in Toronto. I'm on
You're in
Spadina.
Toronto. Good, you're back. Good. Maybe we'll see each other. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Okay. Love is like a travel journal, filled with destinations and sites, a pocket list of landmarks, each with their own points of attraction. My journal is relatively empty, It is like a map I was given entering adolescence, a white sheet so bare it was hard to tell it even existed. I saw dots and borders and roads appear on my friends' maps like lights flickering on as the sun continued to set into darkness. I just had a main highway, and loneliness was my only companion on this long, long journey. But he wasn't always the best to travel with. So I tried to replace love with a real map. I circled cities I wanted to visit and people I wanted to meet, and I replaced the map with flight tickets. Some bought, some won, some borrowed. I took the slip road and replaced flight tickets with my own 2 feet to meet passerby and nomads and hitchhikers and those who take in hitchhikers. I searched for someone in the entire population. I made conversation in a variety of tongues, learning to flirt more than I ever even wanted to, unconsciously replacing loneliness with love. No one wanted to know where I came from. No one wanted to fill my map or give me directions or a place to stay at night. How would I find someone willing to paint the surroundings around me? I was stuck in gray because loneliness refused to refurnish and I was too under his spell to say no. I became a recurring traveler, never staying too long at one place, telling myself I couldn't come to love a city or a boy's blue eyes if I skipped town faster than it takes to get attached. But these people didn't count as marks on my map. They didn't even make it a bullet point on my journal, and it seemed as though the search would be eternal, but I knew it was wrong. I knew I was covering too much distance without taking any time to slow down and stop and think, do I want him to hold me just for today? Because I am picky when it comes to love, but I am nothing without intimacy, so I search for it in places I know it will never grow. Why is it that it never grows? Why is it that it never works out in my favor? Why do the people I love never love me back? And why do I replace them with a line of boys all ready to fall like dominoes? There are ghost towns that I have created. It hurts traveling so long when you know you do not have a home to go back to. Everyone else has settled down and some have even found a house in themselves, but I have found no home. Instead, I reside in hotel rooms and abandoned terminals. I listen to the beat of heartbreak at bus stations and in departure lounges. I visit Paris, Hawaii, Malé, Moscow, anywhere I think my love can be returned. All I get is a return flight. Thank you.
Thank you, wonderful. Okay, now is Mahela's turn, right? I'm not sure if I,
Yeah,
I think.
it's Mahela. I'm also a student of Professor Moritz's, and Haya was the one that recommended this event to me. I'm going to read a few short poems. I've been writing a lot of science fiction poetry, so not quite on theme, but that's what you're going to hear. So this first one I wrote after reading an article about postmodern urbanism, so it's got a bit of weird neologisms in it. Best case scenario. Siberia huddles under suburbia's condos, under falling concrete and rusting iron freeways. Disinformation superhighways propagate graffiti ads for new cough syrup. A pay-per-ride glory coaster, tunnel of love, vignettes of locked fence mansions and clandestine street fights. Global latifundia has funded my lawn and pesticidal tendencies. Monoculturing grass for us Holsteins to munch. Absolute family dinner unit. Waiter, there's mimetic contagion in my soup. Infotainment commercials on the tube sponsor new citadels of commerce for big buck briefcases. Sharpie marking the city borders, colored in beyond peripheries in shade black. Autocomplete this Autopia Sunset Boulevard with me. You see this already? All right, and then I'm going to be reading a shorter one about biking to the beach, which I did with Grace, who is our next reader, a few weeks back. Biking to Cherry Beach. Lake Frater stretches rust water out to the island, a quayside apartment with planked play structures and masked children. Bike bounces over potholes, milk crate clatter, POWERP on the tower fallusing ahead. Biking on smooth paths with wildflower meadows and wooden country house fencing. A dead skunk resting on green, tents dot intermittent trees, new beachside cottages for our unheld, got lost in the rewilded swamp lilies, the CN Tower striking through a dead field mouse on a beach of torn out, round-cornered bricks. Pick up the chewed off phone receiver, throw broken glass into deep water. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Anna.
Yeah.
George here. Sorry, I have to go, but I just want
Yeah.
to say thank you to you and to everyone. I've enjoyed all of the works, and I wish you well. I look forward to seeing the book when it's done. And thank you, Michael, for your support for us all. And let us continue.
Okay.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, George.
Thank you.
Molly, yeah, you're
Bye-bye,
also
George.
Yeah. Bye, George. So Molly, you
Bye.
also need to, right? Molly, you also need to go, or
Yeah, I do. There are only 3 more readers. Is that correct?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna stay for Grace, and then I've got to go.
Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Molly.
Now, yeah, Grace, it's your turn. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, I was also a student of Professor Moritz's, and I will continue off the bike theme. And this is a poem from a summer past. It's called August 1st. On a familiarly humid morning, hard to pronounce, my bike caught a pipe, sent me knees to asphalt. A skid, an event. That night, Mom tied garlic to the cupboard handle. Dad was pacing slightly, told me his dream. I had drowned, emerging before the end of the bridge. He also said with a rare graveness how it was a bike that left my grandpa bedridden, 80 and still insisted on biking. My aunt would call from North Carolina, begging my cousin to hide the bike. No matter, he found it again and on a rainy day met his fate. Mom pulled out the bayal and Dad tapped the white powder onto the pain. This medicine, long ago, was learned from a tiger observed covering her wound with herbs. Too squeamish, Mom retreated. Dad showed me the scars below his eyebrow, on his hand, his foot. Guns, knives, fences. That was the rural life, and I, tanned copper from commutes, stiff with injury, felt myself edge fondly towards that lost world that I would never earn. Too pleased, curious I was. And if I could just read one short poem, it's inspired by the pandemic, and it's called Narrative. In the narrative of life, who is to say what goes? Words come, haunt, and play memory of the mind. My lips touch yours, and suddenly we are parted. We keep the months, but let the pen wander. Later we mask ourselves, make the speeches opaque. This is normal after all. With each step, we do the best with the information we are given. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you again, Anna. Thank you, Michael, so much for publishing this anthology. It's great to see and hear you, Alice and Al. Bye-bye.
Bye, Molly. Thank you.
Yeah, so now I wanted to share a screen. It's Wang Yang's turn. Linka, Wang Yang's turn. Could anyone let me know what the screen look like? A poem or like chairs? The poem?
It's okay. It's okay, and you don't have to share screen. I just
The poem
read.
was there, now it's gone.
Okay, good. The poem's
Oh,
there,
it's
right?
okay. It's okay. I just read. So this is before I read my poem. I want to make a quick comment on George's poem. Like he likes Mao's poetry. Though Mao is a very controversial figure in the history in China, but as far as poetry is concerned, yes, he's a good poet. Yeah. my poem, I wrote this on the exact day of my 43rd birthday a few years ago. And I translated it into English for fun, as Molly said. Here it goes. Cheers for my 43rd birthday. Time washes its pale color of a leaf of goldenness, so tranquil and beautiful. No, I wouldn't exchange it for my pinky childhood, nor greenish youth. They're fresh and clean, like coffee beans, but have not been roasted. The darkness I've experienced and the silver gray at the door cannot sadden me anymore. They turn into bubbles, blown by golden breezes, like an old captain at the sea, blowing a cup of coffee, softly, under an early morning sky filled with golden twilight. And Anna allows me to read the Chinese version, the original one as well. So here it goes. 干一杯吧，为我的43岁。时光洗去苍白，留下一页金黄的静美。不，我不会用它换回青春的青涩或稚时的粉嫩。它们像咖啡豆般清香可爱，可是没有经过烘焙。曾经的墨色和将来的银白也不再令我忧伤。它们成了泡沫，被这金黄轻轻地吹，就像那个老船长在某个金色的清晨吹着甲板上一杯慵懒醇厚的咖啡。Thank you.
Oh, very good, beautiful. Okay, now it's our last open reader, Lei Chen, Chen Lei. Yeah, it's your turn. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. So I'm sitting outside enjoying.
Oh, I'm still sharing my screen.
I think.
No longer.
Okay, good. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, go. Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sitting outside enjoying the sunshine and listen to poetry. What a luxurious life I have here. So I'm going to read two poems. One poem was just published on the St. Jerome's Day last Thursday on a journal called The Transcultural. It's a translation of Ma Hui's poem. So I had 3 poems translated, but I'll read this one plus a poem I wrote myself. So I'm going to look at the poem now. Okay, so the translation of Ma Hui's poem, and it's interesting because Ma Hui's poem was a rendition of the 6 Dalai Lamas poem in 17th century in Tibet. So my translation is based on Ma Hui's version. So it's a translation of translation. So here's the poem. Heroes in the floating dust. The weather changed faster than my mood. Catastrophe dawned more suddenly than fame. My heart turned cold, making all stumble at a curse. I started with the crime of which I was wrongly accused, acting innocent, conspiring sophistication. My prospects ruined again and again by murderers.
Oh, sorry.
Only the scriptures carved in the bones saved me from worldly affairs. I looked ahead. The heroes in the floating dust, one by one, failed and failed. The beauties in the mirror, little by little, withered. Only for the purpose of death did I strive to live, while others everywhere felt ashamed. So this is a poem. I'm also reading a short poem I wrote. I and you. I, a reckless girl, reckless and free-spirited, chasing after one dream after another, like Kitty Mango running after dragonflies at the backyard, justifying my fantasy as cross-cultural travels, as mothering a daughter of bilingualism and multiculturalism, glorifying my courses as feminist movements. You, a loyal partner, a protective bodyguard, an unobtrusive advisor, a loving supporter. Your companionship along this journey of feminism, of heroism, of bilingualism, and multiculturalism redefines them all. Thank you. That's my
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. And now, now is we already passed our time. So thank you all again for joining us. And I will post this video on YouTube. So feel free to check and to share your comments as well. Okay. Have a great weekend. And
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Anna.
much, guests, our guests.
The great Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. So I will
Our
check
guests.
some, yes, they had some like questions for me. I will check and then I will give you separate answers. So I don't want to let everyone to stay here and yeah, you can come out to enjoy the autumn finally. Okay, thank you. And
Thank you,
this
Anna.
is, yeah, just I wanted to mention this is our final session for the whole session, 5 sessions together already. And I really thank our all guest poets and also our audience and for joining us. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
bye.
but bye. Thank you.